It is now time to experience the buzz, a podcast that takes an inside look at amazing people doing amazing things. Get ready for some great conversation that will be fascinating, educational, and inspiring. We will also leave room to help small businesses in a big way. Now, here's your host, entrepreneur Steve Buzzard.
Well, hello, everyone. It's Steve Buzzard with Experience the Buzz. It has been a minute, but I am so excited to be back to bring you a podcast. It started back in January of 2021. We've done over 130 episodes, but we've had this big gap. But I'm proud to tell you that we are back for a special edition in which we are going to bring back Brian Katz. He was with me back in December of 2021. A month before that, he had announced his retirement from coaching basketball. A career that spanned well over 40 years, the last part of his career being at Sac State where he graduated from. He did major success on all levels that he coached at, and he now has a book. That's right. It is called The Road More Traveled, and it just came out yesterday and is available on Amazon. But the good thing is that we have Coach back, and we're going to be able to talk to him and kind of dive into what this book was all about, what inspired him to do it, and then some lessons learned along the way, not only as a coach, but from the players that he talks about. So without further ado, let's get to it. Well, hello, everyone. It's been a long time since we've talked, and I'm so excited because what a great way to come back by bringing someone who has actually already been on the show. I am speaking about Brian Katz. Over 40 years college coach, had his last tenure at Sac State where he graduated from, and now he's got a book. So he was with me in December of 2021. For those of you from Sacramento, if you know, that was about the time that he was retiring from Sac State. I think it was a shock to everybody, right? But it was the right move at the right time. And here we are a few years removed. And so, Brian, I welcome you back to Experience the Buzz, a second go around.
I'm excited to be here, Steve. It's great to hear your voice and all the enthusiasm you always bring.
Well, you know it. And when I'm talking to you, it's always a lot of fun. And I'm really pumped for you because you wrote a book. It is called The Road More Traveled, A Coach's View from the Bench. And so maybe give us the nutshell and then we'll kind of dive into it.
Well, it's interesting. So the day I retired, November 5th, I think it was 2021,
yes.
I want to honor my former players. I want to find a way to do that. So what I decided to do is I said, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And so it started off like that. And then I went, you know what, let's have 10 stories, 10 chapters, and just 10 kids. Now it turns out it's 13 kids because there's one chapter that has 3 kids and one chapter that has 2. But I said, you know what, I want real life, authentic stories because these are incredible young men and I want their story told. And along the way, I would like for their leadership, their mentoring, and also their parenting to be role modeled, because I felt like the relationship piece is bigger than just player to player. I mean, player to coach. It's player to player. It's actually parent to player. It's actually coach to parent. It's all of the above. So I wanted to highlight all these things, and I didn't want to, and I'll quit rambling, but I didn't want it to be a, here's how you coach book. Oh, right. Here's how you develop leadership. I wanted it to be their story. And along the way, some of those things come out.
Yeah. And I think you accomplished exactly what you set out to do. I had a chance to go through it. And as I was reading it, I will say the one thing I was blown away was the detail, right? I could not even wrap my head around how did it get all that detail with all these stories. But I know we were kind of talking before we came on. You thought it and knew it was necessary to be able to give as much as possible, because I think it not really painted a picture. It just painted this picture that had bright colors. You knew everything about the 10 stories that you told. I don't think you left anything out.
Well, it's interesting because the editor is a great guy. He's from Tennessee. His name's John Morehouse. He would say, you don't need to exactly say the exact words, just kind of say it. And I said, no, I want to do that because I remember it. Just to dive into it, there's one called a direct miss. And young man named Jesse Satterfield, who comes up from Southern California because he had 3 gunshots fired at him. And he said, you know what? I got to change my venue, change my life. So he comes up, and as I went through the process with him, sitting with and ironically, his aunt and his minister, he brought his minister. He's the only recruit I've ever had bring his minister. So I went, oh, this is different. I mean, they drove up all these hours in 100-degree heat. So now I'm paying attention.
Right.
And by the way, a little backstory: was given up at birth by his mom. Dad had died when he was 13. So here we go. But here's the big moment. You sit in there after going through how hard it's going to be, all the above, and you say, Jesse, why would you want to do this? Yeah. And I'll never forget to this day, to make a better life. Well, I feel like as a coach, I always tried to be, it's like being a parent, be switched on, really listen, and don't get distracted by other things. So I always felt when I was talking to my players, I didn't want to just hear what they said. I wanted to hear how they said it. I wanted to read their body language because I really felt it was important, the relationship wise, to know what's going on.
Yeah. And so with these stories, like, I love the fact that your first story was about your very first recruit, right? And I think that was a good way to like kick it off. Like, we know that you started at Castle Roble High School, went to Center High School, but your first true job after being an assistant at down in Santa Clara was that you were going to latch on with Lassen. And the way that you told that story, it was like you could just, again, visualize it. So again, I got to give you kudos because the picture was painted, but you started with Derek, and then it went from there. And each story really kind of set apart on its own with different circumstances. I think that was the other piece I liked too, that, you know, you had guys that were true leaders. You had other guys who, like you said, had problems coming in, and you put yourself in these different scenarios that basically span this amazing career that you have as a coach.
You know, I think what I really tried to do too is kind of capture the essence of what coaching really is. Like, here's a great example. I wrote this book to honor my former players, and I wanted my family to read it. And here's the best way I can explain it. And I knew they were going to say this. I knew it was going to come up after they're reading it going, okay, Dad, we thought we know what you were doing. We didn't know what you were doing. Yeah. Because there's so much more than just, oh, you got to drop a play and and you got to call timeout. You got to recruit. There's so much more to it. And I felt like I wanted, I think coaching, just generally speaking, is kind of getting devalued these days. And I want to kind of explain and show, no. These are real life stories. These are real things that matter. And it's really a big deal in terms of young men's development.
Yeah.
Or young women, young men, everybody's development.
Right. And the investment that you put in and the time that you have to put in. Like, if a player is going to look at you, they want that authenticity from you, first of all, whether they're going to come play for you. But I think then it goes deeper than that. And again, that was the thing that really popped out in all of these stories that you told.
Well, what's interesting is we always said you have to have a culture built on honesty. That sounds simple, but the very first time you ever interact with a kid, he has to understand, okay, this is an honest, genuine, authentic guy. Well, you know, the Mike McKinney chapter, which starts off with, why I said it, I have no idea. But the first thing I ever said to the kid is, you look like a weed smoker.
And I happened to read that line.
But here's the point. It turned out to be our defining moment, mine and his. Because fast forward 6 months later, after he's out of sight, out of mind, because I thought he's suspect student. I suspected the marijuana use. I really got into it with him because you still have to pass drug tests and all that. And he was wild as a player and very frail. And so I kind of out of sight, out of mind, didn't think about him. But at the end of the day, when his coach called me, said, no, he wants to come. And I went, why? Because he said he knows you will drug test him and he does not want to do it anymore. He wants to make something of his life. This is a young man that struggled a little bit growing up. He got kicked out of Monroe High School, flunked out, and then had to transfer over to Washington High School. So he struggled, and ironically, I'll jump around through this, but give you a good example was at the end of the day, in one of the very last stories about him, his mom and dad got on the line and said, Coach, we can't thank you for caring about Mike. We never thought he'd even graduate from high school. And yet the kid graduated from Sac State with over 3.0, and he's playing pro ball and all that. He's great success, but he has a degree to build on when his career is over. But going back to it, a culture built on honesty. And I think your players have to understand and feel like from the moment they interact with you, you're going to shoot them straight. And you expect the same.
Right.
And there's some good give and take in the book. Like when I say to Kevin Bland, I want you to take 5 bad shots in every open gym. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay, let's talk about it. That's fine. Good. That doesn't offend me. Let's talk about why you don't want to do that. And let's give and take. Honesty. Now, if he said, oh, yeah, I'll take 5 bad shots, and then he would never do it, then that doesn't help me. But he puts all the cards on the table. No, I don't want to do that. So we negotiated. I got it down to 2. He said he'd take 2 bad shots at open gym, which that's another story. I can never get the kid to shoot. I was trying to get him to shoot. I'm rambling.
I love it. No, you are not rambling, because this is a very important piece. And like you said, you're here to honor your former players. Was it difficult to select who you wanted to talk about? Like, I'm curious of what maybe the original list has been. We're talking over 40 years of coaching, right? Yeah, so you nailed it down to 10. Like you said, there's a couple chapters where there's your 2 star point guards and those are the days I remember from Delta College. And then you got the 3 dinosaurs, which was the name of the chapter of your 3 guys from Sac State at the end. But what was the original list look like? Or did it just kind of all come together?
You're going to laugh. The day I retired, I sat down and started writing every guy's name I ever coached.
Wow.
Every name, all the way back to Sylvan Junior High when I coached 7th graders. I mean, I went right. And then I just started. I thought about it. Was hard. It was hard. There's some stories out there. I won't do this but I actually thought, I should do a volume 2 with 10 more guys. I don't think I'll do that, but it was really hard. There's some really good ones out there still that I didn't tell.
Okay. So you settled in on your 10 chapters. And then take me through the process, because I'm always curious of when someone writes a book, whether it be a biography or in this case, kind of storytelling, what does that look like?
Well, first of all, I hand wrote it because I'm so I'm so challenged with the computer stuff, but I had to learn through this process to do different things. So, but I hand wrote it. And as I was doing it, I realized, you're going to have to talk to the kid. And what I wanted to make sure, I called every guy up. I said, like Jared Kozad, his is called Necessary Pain. And his some very emotional and sensitive subjects in that one. I said, Jared, I'm going to write this. I'm going to send it to you. And then you tell me if there's anything you're uncomfortable with, I'll take it out. I did that with every guy. Okay. And of course, because I'm free to talk about Mike McKinney because, and again, I had to have every guy sign a waiver and all the above. So you got to go through. And I didn't want this to be like someone got blindsided and it's a tell-all, or I'm not trying to do that. It's supposed to be a feel good. And also along the way, I'd say, is there anything I left out? And to a man, almost every one of them had something that I had left out that they felt should be in. So then you go through, and after you finally get written, you need to have an editor and somebody who is removed from these guys. John Morehouse is a guy I've known. He writes for Blue Ribbon magazine. I've known him since I was at Sac State 15, 16 years ago. Though I've never met him in person, we've developed a great relationship. I wanted someone who could say, wait a minute, why are you talking about? Like, he asked the question, I don't think Kirby and Walker should have the same chapter. I go, oh, no, they have to have the same chapter.
Yes, they do.
You don't understand. But that's fine. He had other observations that were great. So you get it edited. Then you go through the thing of, do you want to publish it, self-publish it, how you want to do it? And what I found out was I didn't have the patience for the publishing because everybody wanted to say, hey, these stories are great, but you know what'd be better? Let's make it, a little more Hollywood to it. And I'm like, no. I was trying to write an authentic, real book with real conversation, with real relationships. However that comes out, that comes out.
Right. And it had to represent you,
Yes.
and not something that would be like, oh, okay, did that really happen or not happen? So, and
Right.
so the self-publishing, like, did you feel good about that process? You made that decision because you were telling me in an earlier conversation that, look, you weren't looking to go on the New York bestsellers list. It wasn't about that. This was, like you said in the beginning, to honor all of those players that played for you. And even though it's 10 stories, anybody that played for you could probably read these and go, yep, that's Coach Katz, or can identify with whatever the scenario is that you're talking about in that chapter.
Yeah, and some of the other guys are mentioned, which is kind of cool. The little Delta, each of them have a little family, the Sac State family guys, the Delta. They're kind of cool. They're really all about it and the whole thing. I felt like also with the publishing thing, it just became like you're kind of at the mercy of waiting for people, and also they don't have a good feel for what you're trying to do. So I felt good about the self-publishing process. You'd be shocked. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, it's once you get the actual manuscript and you start, it's pretty seamless. I mean, it's press a button and it's bing, bang, bong, and it gets going. Now, truth be told, I am the most technologically challenged person on the face here. Literally, Stephen, his fiance Amanda, and Megan, they had to help me. Those are two of my children. I have 5 children. 2 of them had to help. Well, all 3 of them, counting Amanda. I would never, ever. I'd still be working on it 15 years later. So, but that said, the self-publishing thing's pretty cool.
That's great. That's great. We are visiting with Brian Katz. He's a retired basketball coach, over 40 years. His last tenure with Sac State, left the game in 2021. But as he spoke here, right away, he was thinking about the book. So it was like on your mind. So here we are a few years later, and it's like, how are you feeling now, right? Because I think when we interviewed in December, which is about a month out of retirement, obviously it's going to still be fresh. You're still processing that big decision you had to make. But the itch, that itch, because once you're a coach, you're always a coach. How do you feel now in 2024?
Feel great. And I don't, the only thing that I'm not going to go back in coaching. I like the role that I have now, meaning I'm writing about it. I'm in contact with a lot of former players that are coaching, assistants that are coaching. I went up to Idaho. Brandon Laird was one of my assistants. University of Idaho, spent 4 days up there. Now, it's just great. The kids are in the gym. The ball's bouncing. I do the TV work too with I'm going to do 3 episodes this year with Sports Extra on, Channel 13. So I have to study the NCAA, which is really good. It forces you to study the game and really pay attention and all of that. That's enough for me now. The analogy I gave people is the way I went at it, and I think most coaches, honestly, I think most coaches do. It was like if you took a Volkswagen in California and you headed to New York and you put it in 5th gear and put your foot on the floorboard. Eventually, the parts are going to start to fall off. Now, where are they going to start falling off at? Is it going to be Utah, Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania, I don't know. But eventually, because that's the aggression, the commitment, the investment, the pace that you have to. Here's what I would say. This is the best example. I miss coaching. I don't miss the lifestyle.
Gotcha.
Because the lifestyle is 24/7, 365. And when people hear that, they think, yeah, you don't really. No, Christmas Day, you're in the office from about 5 to noon so you can get home and be part of Christmas, because the next day you're either flying somewhere or you're practicing, you got a game. I mean, those are things that, so anyway, I don't miss the lifestyle. Now, what do I miss? I miss the day-to-day contact with the players, and I miss practice. Those 2 things, and they're kind of related. I always loved that. I love practice and I love the day-to-day contact with the players.
Yeah, because would you say you're A-type, right? Because I know you would always go in very early. You were a big time planner, and whether it be practice or a game, you had a way about how you did things.
Yeah, and you know what? Yes, absolutely. That's why, I got up ready at 4 and got to work by 4:45, and then, all the above. But anyway, stuff like this, here's a good example. So as a head coach, I think that everybody does it differently, but I think the perception is always, well, the head coach, he's kind of a CEO. I never wanted to be that. I wanted to what I would do is text the guys and say, hey, get there 20 minutes early, like Steve Buzzard. You and I are going to work on your shooting. So now I'm the passer.
Yeah.
We're working on shots that I'm helping you. You're saying, wow, coach must really believe in me because he's here early. This is the head coach. It's not an assistant. And then we're practicing shots that you're going to shoot in the game. Power suggestion. We're not practicing shots you're not shooting in the game. But more importantly, when a kid is really struggling, the best thing is you just, you don't need a big pep talk. You just, hey, meet me 20 minutes early, we're going to work. And then you just, sometimes you wouldn't say a word. You just 1, 2, 3. Hey, let's talk about this. Now you just made 12 in a row. You understand that, right? I did. Yeah. 12 in a row. I mean, that's pretty good when you say, or like, maybe it's free throw shooting. I would always say, let's with the kids struggle, let's shoot till you miss. And let's say a kid makes 4 in a row. Now, some guys will shoot. I've had guys make 75 or 80 in a row. Let's say a kid makes 4 in a row. You go, is that, how do you think about that? That's pretty good. No, not very good. I go, let me ask you a question. How many in a row do you have to make in a game ever? 3. Well, you just made 4. That's pretty good. No, for real. So
I know it's the breakdown.
It's
right?
the power suggestion. It's the subliminal. I believe in you. I am here early. I love this one. When we practice at 5 in the morning, and we did because at Sac State we didn't have access to the gym when we wanted. We practiced at 5 in the morning in the fall. We started in about September 1 to about October 15th, 20th, 5 in the morning. Right? Love telling a guy, hey, get there early at 4:30. You and me in the gym. Nothing better than saying to a kid going, you know, there's no place else I'd rather be right now. Do you know that? Do you realize how cool this is? So, you know, and you're sweating and you're moving and you got energy and you're coaching them and you're excited. And so as a result, the young man's going, he is here at 4:30. He really believes in me.
Yeah.
Really a big deal. So I know I'm rambling, but my style was hands-on.
Yeah.
I didn't like I've heard coaches say, yeah, they have their assistants come in and go through breakdown tape with the guys. That's fine. They can do that. That's good. But it's important because the young man's going, this is the head coach and this is what he wants. And he's taking the time to invest in me.
Wow. Well, here he is. It's Brian Katz. He's an author now, The Road More Traveled. And we're going to talk about how you can get the book as it's getting ready to come out. 3 things that hit me that I do want to hit on with the book as we kind of continue that discussion. And I love the hoop talk. Like I love talking hoops with you because obviously you've got so many stories, and that is evidenced by the book that you wrote, in which you highlight 10 some players within your journey. But number one, I have to say the introduction took me because I mean that because you know what? That is the seed that is planted for every single person, because right when I read who your seed was, that kind of gave you that confidence, I thought about my 4th grade teacher. I mean, that Mr. V, he stood 5'4". And so I think anybody who reads that will be able to go to the place of the person that means that to them. And I just love that you shared that, because knowing you as long as I have, just getting kind of that glimpse into your past was pretty special. I'm glad you shared that to introduce things.
Thank you. And again, real quickly, I do believe there is that moment in time when a young person gets validation from someone other than their mom and dad who says, I believe in you. And as a young person, that's bigger than your parents, because your parents are supposed to say that, right?
Right.
Coach Presci, my JV baseball coach, was my idol. He could outrun us backwards when we were running sprints. He's in the Chico State Hall of Fame in 2 sports. I mean, he was my idol. When he said, I see more in you than you do in yourself. Wow. No one's ever said that.
I love that. And then on page 13, it was the second story. And there was a paragraph where you talked about there's tough love involved with what you do. Depending on the circumstances, but you use the analogy of cough syrup, right? Like it's not easy to do. It's harsh. It seems that way, but it's so necessary. Even what you said about Mike McKinney, maybe that wasn't the greatest first line, but it ended up being a defining moment for your relationship. So you have a lot of that like trust in you and the ability to be able to go the direction you need to connect with whatever player and whatever they're going through.
Yeah, the one with Jared Kozad is, I thought it was a really, I mean, again, same thing. You just sit there and you think, in my mind, this is how I viewed it. I'm sitting across from him. This is 4th and 1. He's been messing up in his entire life. You know why. You know what the deal is. This is your chance to help him. I wanted to be his voice of reason. So you know what I told him, of course. I said, hey, I know a lot more about you than you think I do. You know, you've been a mess since your brother passed away in that car wreck. What do you think he would be saying right now about the way you've lived your life, drugs, alcohol? I mean, he was into everything for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, out of high school, everything. And he was off the deep end in every direction. And so what I was trying to do with love in my heart, and this is why I say it's not negative, was what do you think he would say right now? You're not yelling at him, you're not. And I'm telling you, it was a defining moment because he looked up, well, I don't know. And I said, well, yeah, you do. You think he'd be happy with that? And he'll tell you to this day, because his life completely turned around. Now, again, I didn't turn his life around. He did. But I gave him the chance by saying something that's authentic from the heart with love in my heart, because I had watched what is going on and I knew what was going on. And I knew that this was what, because he was a great kid. And when that happened with his brother, he went, as we all might.
Sure.
But I wanted to be his voice of reason and say, do you think he'd be happy with what you've been doing since he passed away? What would he say?
Wow.
For him, that was the right button.
Yeah.
Now, everything's different. It was tough love with him. He did the rest. I didn't do anything.
So I'm curious for you going through the ranks, right? High school, JC at Lassen, a great 18-year career at Delta. You come back to Sac State. What about you personally? Do you feel like you've been this coach the whole time, or obviously have learned along the way? We always say, hey, you're not growing if you're not learning, right? So what's like been your journey personally as a coach? Has it been pretty consistent based on maybe that childhood memory, or have you seen growth or defining moments that have helped you along?
I'll give you a great example. First of all, here's the answer to your thing. No question in my mind, and I write this in the introduction.
Mhm.
I benefit way more. They help me way more than I ever helped them. People say, oh, you mean on the court? Of course, but not just that. A million ways you learn things. That's what a true relationship is. You learn from each other. I was confident enough to say, hey, I'm the boss, but we can learn from each other. I mean, I'm going to make decisions at the end of the day. You know that. But you're going to make a decision. Here's a great example. So Chris Walker, his freshman year goes down, and we're up 1 in the Sweet 16 game at Diablo Valley College. He goes to the line, 2 free throws. He misses it. They come down, blow it down the court, hit a shot, the buzzer, we lose. Devastating. Devastating way to lose the season, end the season. Chris is our best player, a great player. So he's my student assistant. So the next day, I see his manuscript for his English class. It's a diary. And, I don't know why I flipped through it. I'm being nosy. He's not there. I flip through it and I go, well, I wonder what he wrote about yesterday when we got beat and how devastated we are. He wrote, word for word, we lost yesterday in the playoffs. Can't wait for next year. Got a lot of improvement to make. That's it. So here's what I learned. Like, I really had to think and analyze this and go through this. Chris was a kid. He didn't jump up and down and scream and yell and pout and cry forever. It was just like people with deep inner confidence, which is what you're looking for in a person, in a player, in a student, an employee. Deep inner confidence who can overcome adversity. They're really good at quickly moving on. And the reason they can move on is they believe in themselves and they go, okay, I know what I'm going to do to fix that. I'm going to work so hard in practice or in the off season. And so, yeah, I learned from that. I don't want to miss free throws, and it's not going to happen again, but I'm going to learn from that. And they quickly move on. Guess what? All the studies show those that don't move on, that continually beat themselves up, they don't improve as fast and they hold down their development. Guess what? I can be one of those guys. I used to, as a coach, like, oh God, how could I have done that? And then beat myself up. Well, where you're doing that, you're not focusing on the next thing, and you're not really learning and getting better. Fast learners, people that can get rid of it quickly and move on, they learn faster. So from Chris, because Chris, I mean, the fire burned hot on the inside, ice on the outside. Don't kid yourself. It devastated him to miss those free throws and lose. But I was blown away. So you learn a million things from them. A million every day.
I love that. And speaking of players, the one I could connect most with, because I remember Chris Walker. I remember because that time, we were kind of following you at Delta College and stuff. And, because your kids were younger, mine were younger. So we were
Yeah.
kind of talking more about it. But when you got to Sac State, there was like this excitement that, okay, Brian Katz, the guy who graduated from Sac State, is now the coach. Local. We love that. We know it's a commuter school, but man, we're going to see something. And steadily, Sac State just like kept getting better and better. But there's that one defining moment. And I don't say but, I'll say within that, there was a defining moment,
Yes.
and it was Dylan Garrity. And it was
Yes.
a shot. And I will add something after I let you tell the story, because I will
Yeah.
show you what effect it had on my basketball league when it happened. But tell everybody about this if they don't know Hale Garrity.
Yeah, Dylan, it's called Hale Garrity, the chapter. He made a 77-footer off the wrong foot, no dribble, at the buzzer in the second overtime to beat Weber State. #1 play on Sports Center. It blew up all over the whatever. But here's the point. The chapter starts off and says, this is a story of how one shot changed our program. I totally believe that. We were grinding uphill, getting there. Year before, we had 4 1-point losses in league. We beat Oregon State. We lost. Didn't quite get in the tournament. We're grinding. We can't quite get over the top. Weber State's in first place at that point. They're really good. This is beating the best program in the conference over the past 50 years. Big deal. Shot goes in, boom, explosion. It's kind of like, we're over the hump. On top of all that, what it basically, and I write this in the book, I say, you can say, call me crazy, it was lucky. I don't believe it was luck. I don't. From the moment I recruited him, there was a childlike innocence and belief, deep inner confidence in himself that just emanated through people. Like when he played, the ball just looked poetic. Everything looked possible. Everything was so easy because he was so skilled. And he made his teammates so much better. They'd run harder. They'd cut harder. On the screen and roll, they'd go harder. They'd run their lane harder. They'd defend harder. All of those things. So I say, and we go back to this energy that can be created, that unbelievable things can happen. And when that happens, boom, you catch lightning in a bottle and magic happens. And I'll never forget the first time I ever saw him play. I went down and watched a high school game, and I describe it in the book. I watched him warm up in 1 quarter, and I said, I'm offering him. And I've never, ever, ever, ever done that with a guy. But the reason was, first of all, I watched his skill set. The main thing was his skill set, but this was more of a main thing. It was a rival game. They had packed house. They rode him the entire warm-ups. They mocked him. They had signs that said overrated this. He never even, it was like he was the only guy in the gym. No response. He was unflappable. Well, and he had that. They double teamed him in the backcourt the whole game, denied him in the front court. He only touched the ball like 6, 7 times, but he made it work. He had like 8 points, like 5 assists, whatever. But point is, all he had, when you watched his essence and who he was, you knew all things were possible. And that essence and that energy was going to emanate through the program. And it did. So that shot, yes, that shot was the defining moment. And funny story, he made that shot the week before in a shoot around at North Dakota. And we all looked at each other and went, what? 10 days later, he made it when it counted.
When it counted. And here's the funny thing, because at that time, our league, we were playing games at Sac State.
Yes.
And I remember that very next day, I saw kids in that spot. And there was like conversation. No, it was conversation going on like, Hey, yeah, did you see that highlight last night? Dylan Garrett, like the talk was there and it was like, that is cool. Like that, I love that. It's like, that's what it's all about right there, just creating moments and, that ripple effect that helps others. And like you said, created the excitement.
No question. And look, at the end of the day, it's all about all of us, players included, growing, learning, and then giving back. And Dylan's, if you get on his social media, he's doing nonprofit stuff all the time. He's donating his time. It wouldn't shock you. He's extremely successful, married, young daughter. It's exactly what you'd expect because, my line with Dylan is, one of my favorite phrases is there was a man, they thought him mad. The more he gave, the more he had. That's Dylan.
Yeah.
I can't explain it.
Well, and
I mean,
these are just anecdotes of what are 10 great stories. And so if you're a local, like, we're speaking to Sacramento, but really, I hope this does go nationwide somehow, some way, because the stories are incredible. So can you help us know when, we are speaking here on March 6th? Is it out? Is it coming out? How do we get our hands on this book?
you could order it this moment. It is out. You go to Amazon. It's on Amazon. You push the button. It's ironic. It came out yesterday, and it's got a lot of hits. It really has.
Let's
And
go.
yeah, not just from here too. So it's kind of exciting. And then the other thing you could do if you wanted to, you can do it that way. And then here we go. My kids and my wife, they created we got to have a website, coachbriankatz.com. You
Oh,
can go
that's
there.
cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you
Yeah.
don't like it, but
Yeah,
that's scary.
it gives information. And then also like your podcast can be put on there, events coming up, all the above, this type of thing. But just go to Amazon. You can order it now. It's
Okay.
for sale as we speak. And it's real simple. I had a guy really correct me today. I've always said, like, the guy asked me, he said, well, what did you want from this? I said, all I wanted to do was honor my former players, that my family read it. He goes, I wouldn't say that to people. I said, what do you mean? Well, why don't you tell them you want to honor your former players and you want your family, but you also would like as many people as possible to experience these stories and benefit from it. And so I went, oh, okay. Because again, obviously, look, I'm not going to tell somebody don't buy the book, but
Right.
at the end of the, we'd like everybody to buy the book. But at the end of the day, the guy said, what was your goal? I said, well, I already achieved it. It's published. I achieved my goal,
Yeah.
And so, and for these young men, look at that goofy picture on the back there.
I
So
love it.
with these young men, I told them, I said, a couple of them were like, coach, no, you're not seeing this clearly. You're going to have this on your shelf. Your kids are going to read this and go, oh my God, my dad did this. And all the great stories, it's going to be something that your family can share. Good example, Phil Ritchie, fantastic player. His kids never saw him play. Never saw him play. They're reading the book going, oh my God, Dad, you were that good? Or you did this? You're always telling us to be unselfish, but you really did that? And by the way, two fun facts. Phil Ritchie going in the Junior College Hall of Fame next Wednesday. Huge honor. 80% of the guys that have been inducted are NBA guys. And the number one guy in that Hall of Fame is the Jackie Robinson. Jackie
Wow.
Robinson, Men's Basketball Hall of Fame, California Community College. We're flying down there. It's in Southern California. Derek Clark, first chapter of the book, going into the Hall of Fame at Metro State, April 20th. We're flying out there for that. I don't need to say more. How much better can coaching be?
Exactly. And it doesn't end for you because the fruits of your labor are all out there. And I imagine, like you said, you took the visit to Idaho to be with Brandon Laird. I imagine you are reaching out to other coaches. There's so many directions you can go. And
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
you're well respected in the coaching ranks, even if you are retired. But I'm glad to see you in a place where you are happy. And it's good to see that some time has passed and
Mhm.
you are satisfied.
I really am. I really am. It's you and I laugh because we talked about this. I'm pretty obsessed with golf right now. I'd like to tell you I'm better than I am, but not as much as I like to be. And you just have time to do things with your family. Like we traveled to Greece, New York, and things. I always say you're playing catch up with your kids.
Right.
I'm able to play golf with Vinny and Steven every other week. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, I know that how that is with your boys as well. When anytime you can do something with your family, it's fantastic. Because when you're coaching, not as much time to do that. A lot of
Right.
times,
Huge sacrifice. It's a huge sacrifice. But what I think you had going for you is you had a family that supported you. Like that goes
100%.
without saying. So they knew what you're doing. And like you said, this kind of heightened everything, like really pulling back the curtain, as I like to say, wow, it is much more than what we think. And so kudos to you. Great job on the book. I'm excited I got the opportunity to just talk to you about it. And I hope it does very well, because I think it can go beyond just the kind of the local area, because I think the message, even though they are stories, kind of transcends anybody across the nation or in the world. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, we've already achieved our goal. We published the book. Hey, the guys are, oh, New York Times bestseller. I mean, I'm not going to say we wouldn't like that, but that's not the way we're going to define our, success or not. But, as always, it'll be probably a bigger hit locally and in Northern California and in California than anywhere, but that's fine. I mean, everybody on Amazon across the earth has access to Amazon. So
Absolutely.
we'll see.
I was
But
just
thank
saying
you.
I was just saying to my wife today, I said, you know what? A great modern day invention is Amazon. Like,
Oh,
I mean, you think about how it's changed our world, the access and the instability. It's like, okay, this has been a thing that has improved my life, because if I order this book, and you gave me a copy, which was very kind of you, but if I order this book, it could be on my doorstep by tomorrow, and I don't have to leave my house.
yeah. And the best part about it is exactly what you said. And I was, because in the beginning, self-publishing, I go, well, am I going to be trying to sell these out of the back of my car? Like, I was like, no, here it is. It's right on the website, and it just press a button. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be involved in that. I mean,
You're not gonna have a table at Sac State basketball games.
No. Now, real quick thing though, it probably at this point with people that ordered yesterday, it's taken right now about 10 days to get there.
Okay.
So in other words, if somebody ordered it today, they'd get it in about 10 days.
Okay.
Now, my experience so far in the books that we have gotten from them, the proofs, they're pretty good about saying it's going to take 2 weeks. It's always come faster, always. So it's, I can't tell you about this thing with Amazon. It's pretty good.
That's great. Okay. Well, there it is. The Road More Travel by Brian Katz, Coach Brian Katz. And this is a special edition of Experience the Buzz. Glad we got time to talk to the former coach. And, well, I say former coach, but he's always going to be a coach. We're going to take a break, and I'll come back with a final word.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode of Experience the Buzz by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. It means everything. Now, back to the show.
Well, there you have it, Coach Brian Katz. And yes, the book, he is now an author. There it is, The Road More Travel. Very good. Really enjoyed the time with Brian and being able to talk basketball. Listen, that conversation could have went a whole lot longer, because I think with any coach, you can just get great stories, right? And I mean, there's so much. And he was able to kind of scratch the surface, but that's why I encourage you to get your hands on this book, especially if you're a basketball fan and then maybe you don't know much about Brian Katz. This will really give you a glimpse into what it is to be a coach. That's not just about the X's and O's. It goes much deeper than that. It's about the relationship. So with this episode, what does that mean? Does that mean we do another episode next week? I'm kind of feeling the fire, so I'm very excited to maybe get back on the horn and get this thing going. The beautiful thing about podcasts is that they never leave, right? All the 130 plus episodes that we've done up until this point are alive and well. And I structure those conversations to try to stand the test of time. And so I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to get Brian on, do a follow-up since he retired back in November of 2021. And of course, I hope to bring you another guest, but enjoy this episode and go purchase that book by Coach Brian Katz. Well, that's all I got for now. Talk to you next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for joining Steve this week on Experience the Buzz. Steve would love to hear from you. Leave a review or contact Steve directly with any questions at scbuzzard@gmail.com. To see the other adventures of Steve Buzzard, be sure to visit buzzardball.com.